Welcome back to Mission of the Chosen. Tonight, we open a door into the hidden struggle behind your delays, your silence, your unanswered prayers, and why heaven chose this exact moment for you. You've felt it for years, the quiet weight pressing on your chest when no one else notices, the restless nights where your prayers seem to vanish into the ceiling, the haunting thought that maybe God doesn't hear you anymore. But let me tell you something you've never been told: what you're living through isn't neglect, and it isn't random. It's proof that your life is colliding with forces that want to keep you small, silent, and defeated. Look around the world right now. Corruption is dressed in fine clothes and worshipped as success. False leaders build kingdoms off broken people. Hope is packaged and sold like a product, leaving the faithful hungrier than before. You've seen it with your own eyes. Flashy voices promising breakthrough that never arrives. Politicians wrapping themselves in scripture while serving greed. Prophets on screens turning pain into profit. And the cruelest twist, they convinced you it was God's will. They told you your poverty was humility, your silence was submission, your defeat was patience. But these are not truths. They are chains dressed as wisdom. Behind those lies is a strategy: keep you distracted, keep you broke, keep you convinced you are powerless. Because the moment you awaken, the moment you realize who you really are, their entire system begins to collapse. You were never a victim of chance. You were a threat disguised as ordinary. That's why the storms in your life hit harder. That's why the delays have been relentless. The enemy studies the dangerous ones most closely, and make no mistake, you are dangerous to darkness. The oversubscription you feel in life, that strange sense of scarcity, of fighting over crumbs while others feast, is not just economics, it is spiritual strategy. To ration opportunity is to ration hope. To choke access is to silence voices. But here's the truth: no gatekeeper on earth can close what heaven decreed open. What is meant for you cannot be stolen, only delayed. And even the delays are about to expire. Every prayer that felt unanswered has been stored. Every tear you cried has been counted. Every lonely night has been positioning. You thought God was ignoring you, but He was arranging you. When the veil lifts, you'll see that the storm was not random. It was rehearsal for the role only you can play. And now, in this very moment, the curtain is rising. Your spirit knows it. That fire in your chest right now isn't coincidence, it's confirmation. You've been handpicked to see the truth and to stand in it. You can't go back to ignorance anymore. You can't pretend not to notice what you notice. Heaven is asking you to step forward, not timidly, but boldly, because this story is shifting, and you are the turning point written into its pages. So breathe. Shake the dust off your shoulders. Speak even if your voice trembles. Act even if fear lingers, because the same forces that tried to silence you are about to become the backdrop for your unveiling. This isn't the end of your struggle. It's the beginning of your revelation, and every lie that has bound you is about to break under the weight of truth. Chosen one, the night has been long, but the horizon is already burning. What they tried to bury is rising in you, and nothing can stop the dawn that has begun. The walls around you are not made of stone, but of whispers, illusions, and traditions that taught you to settle. For too long you believed silence was holy, struggle was destiny, and unanswered prayers were evidence that heaven had forgotten you. But the ache inside you kept insisting that something was wrong. That ache was not weakness. It was the first sign of awakening. You have seen the masks, leaders cloaked in gold who preach humility but live in excess. Politicians who bend scripture until it fits their greed. Voices promising miracles while draining the weary of their last ounce of hope. And every time you gave and waited, believing that faith required suffering, the chains grew tighter. The cruelest lie wasn't that God abandoned you, it was that your bondage somehow pleased Him. The truth is different. What you felt as defeat was a designed deception. They wanted you small because they feared what would happen if you stood tall. They kept you broke because they knew what you would build if you had resources. They kept you blind because they knew what you would do if you saw clearly. And now that you see, their hold is breaking. Listen to your own spirit. The restlessness is proof you were never meant to stay asleep. Every unanswered prayer was not ignored but stored. Every delay was not denial but preparation. The fire burning in your chest tonight is evidence that heaven has been arranging things behind the curtain, waiting for you to step into clarity. You are not powerless. The fog is lifting. You are beginning to notice the patterns you once dismissed as coincidence. You see through speeches that sound polished but lack truth. You sense when a promise is hollow before it even finishes leaving their lips. What once confused you now reveals itself in sharp detail, and this clarity is not from you alone. It is the gift forged through fire, the first weapon in your hands. And now the path before you changes. It will not be easy, because being awake means you can no longer pretend you don't see. You cannot return to ignorance. You cannot call the chains a blessing when you know they were always meant to hold you back. This responsibility is heavy, but it is holy. To carry truth is to carry a cross, yet the same power that raised Jesus now stirs in you, ready to walk every step beside you. The systems you once trusted will fall away, the comfort you clung to will feel foreign, and the illusions that seemed unshakable will begin to crumble like dust in your hands. That is not loss, it is liberation. And as it unfolds, you will realize the truth. What tried to destroy you was only proving how dangerous you are to darkness. Chosen one, the lies around you are burning away, and what remains is your true reflection, stronger, clearer, and unstoppable. The cage is gone, and you are finally stepping out. You have felt it building, that strange tension in the air, the sense that something unseen is pressing against your life. The world explains it as stress, bad luck, or coincidence, but deep inside you know better. What surrounds you is not random, it is warfare. Not the kind fought with armies or weapons, but the invisible kind that presses against your thoughts, your energy, and your faith. Every morning the weight greets you before you rise, convincing you the day is already lost. Every time you dare to hope, another blow lands, and the dream slips further away. These are not ordinary setbacks. They are carefully timed assaults, meant to wear you down until you accept defeat as your portion. The enemy has studied your life, learned your patterns, and whispered lies so subtle you mistook them for your own thoughts. That's why discouragement feels so natural, why exhaustion feels permanent, and why giving up always seems like the easier choice. Yet something inside you refuses to surrender. That unshakable spark, the whisper that says, "Not yet, not now, not like this," is heaven's reminder that your story is still unfolding. You are not wrestling with flesh and blood. You are pushing against rulers of darkness that hide behind ordinary faces and familiar voices. They come dressed as comfort, speaking in tones that sound safe. They tell you to stop dreaming because your dream is too big. They remind you of your failures and call them your identity. They replay your wounds until you believe you were meant to live broken. But every chain they tighten around you is proof of how afraid they are of what you carry. The reason your battles have been relentless is because your awakening will not only free you but trigger freedom in others. Your breakthrough is contagious. When you rise, others will remember that they can rise too. And that ripple terrifies the forces that profit from keeping people small. That's why the fight has felt personal. It is personal. But this is where the story shifts. The veil is lifting, and heaven is revealing the game board. You are beginning to see the pattern behind the chaos, the fingerprints behind the storms. And once you see it, you can no longer play blind. Every moment of resistance has been building toward this clarity. Every unanswered prayer has been sharpening your hearing. Every delay has been strengthening your resolve. Now the chains are trembling. What was meant to silence you is about to amplify you. What was designed to bury you is becoming the soil where your purpose takes root. The voices that once had power over you are losing their grip because the truth is rising inside you louder than their lies. The storm that once felt like punishment is being revealed as preparation. You are not a victim stumbling in darkness. You are a warrior being forged in fire. And the very forces that tried to destroy you will soon witness your unveiling. Chosen one, the battlefield you feared has become your proving ground, and from its ashes you are emerging unbroken, unstoppable, and awake to the destiny they could never erase. Today the fog lifts further, revealing the subtle traps that posed as answers. Your discernment strengthens, your voice clarifies, and doors begin to swing open when you step with courage. The deeper you go, the more you see how deception works like water in a garden, slow, patient, and everywhere you look, it's been reshaped, so you accept less than you were made for. At first, the compromises felt tiny, almost invisible. A softened truth here, an untested promise there, a habit you justified because you were tired. Over seasons, those tiny shifts braided together into a net that held your movement, muffled your calling, and turned hunger for more into a polite prayer for scraps. That's why recovery from deception always begins with attention. You must notice the small concessions before they calcify into identity. As your eyes widen, you begin to recognize patterns in the people and messages that once seemed harmless. The ones who most loudly demand obedience are often the ones who profit from your obedience. Those who promise quick miracles rarely teach you how to stand in real, steady faith. The comfortable language that tells you to be content with less is rarely spoken by those who live with scarcity. What uncloaks when you watch with heaven's eyes is not only hypocrisy but a carefully engineered ecosystem that thrives on your slowed growth. They learned how to monetize desperation and baptize it in spiritual language until even resistance felt sinful. This awakening isn't about shame, it's about reorientation. Shame freezes you, revelation frees you. When you move from blaming yourself to naming the structures that bound you, everything changes. You stop subscribing to the narratives that sold you as the problem and start seeing the problem as the product of a system that benefits from your limitation. That's where real strategy begins, not in finger-pointing, but in reclaiming your mind, your resources, and your time. Reclamation is a spiritual act. It's not selfish to steward what's meant for you, it's obedience. Notice how relationships shift as clarity arrives. People who were comfortable with your smaller version will react. Some will step away quietly. Some will try to persuade you back into old patterns with guilt or flattering lies. A few will stand and become your fiercest allies. This thinning is painful but necessary. Your circle becomes lighter and truer. You learn to value prophetic honesty over flattering comfort. You discover that loyalty that refuses correction is not loyalty, it's collusion in your stagnation. The courage to choose discomfort over companionship that numbs your growth is a sign you are being prepared for bigger arenas. The voice in you that felt misunderstood all these years is not finally being validated by applause. It is being confirmed by measurable shifts. Doors that once slammed are now opening ajar. Conversations that never landed now land. People who could not hear you begin to listen, not because you become louder, but because you become clearer. Clarity carries authority. When your words align with what heaven is doing, you won't need to demand attention, the assignments will find you. That is how destiny moves, quietly at first, then undeniably. Part of this movement is learning to steward resources differently. The impulse to give everything to the altar of hope, to throw your last into promises that never produce fruit, is a spiritual pattern to unlearn. Generosity remains holy, but discernment about where you invest your life and money is part of spiritual maturity. Heaven honors both the giver and the wise steward. When you begin to steward with clarity, the same systems that once drained you will be forced to adjust or fade. The point is not stinginess, it is alignment. You keep what you need to advance the mission given to you, and you release the rest with peace, not panic. There is also a new posture to prayer that forms in this season. It moves away from bargaining and into declaration. The pleading voice gives way to the speaking voice. You stop begging for crumbs and start declaring your inheritance. This is not arrogance, it is rightful expectation. You have been taught to minimize your requests to make them acceptable, but heaven is growing you into a posture that asks boldly because the promises are already spoken. This shift is dangerous to the kingdom of darkness precisely because it refuses to negotiate with compromise. When you speak reality into your life with conviction, the spiritual structures that once intercepted your petitions begin to lose traction. You will face tests. The enemy uses timing and familiarity to tempt you back into old agreements. Just when a door opens, a familiar lie might whisper, "You don't deserve this." Or success arrives and those who shaped your past try to reclaim you with compliments that smell like chains. The test is not whether you experience temptation, it's whether you act on it. Awareness gives you new options. You can choose humility without self-erasure, generosity without foolishness, and courage without pride. These are the fine edges of maturity, walking between extremes with wisdom. Another sign of progress is the kind of influence that finds you now. It's not always thunderous. Often it looks like one conversation at a bus stop, an unexpected message, a quiet moment where someone says, "I needed to hear that." Your impact becomes measurable in ripples rather than followers. This humbles and steadies you because you begin to care less about volume and more about depth. Depth transforms communities in ways viral moments never can. The world needs depth now, voices shaped by sorrow and sharpened by truth, not by flash. Remember that forgiveness is part of the reclaiming process, not its alternative. Forgiving those who misled you doesn't erase accountability. It simply frees your heart to move on without dragging rotten anchors. When you release the bitterness, you reclaim energy for creation. Forgiveness is a discipline that returns resources to your future. You forgive because you refuse to let the past define your capacity to act now. It is an act of sovereignty. As you step into clearer assignment, practical doors will follow. Opportunities that once felt like luck will have the fingerprints of purpose. People will appear who carry keys you need. Projects will align that match the season's calling. Not everything will be dramatic. Sometimes the provision is a calm check, arriving at the exact moment you needed, or a quiet compliment that opens a network. Learn to recognize God's economy. It is precise and often low-key. The miraculous can wear ordinary clothes. Above all, hold to patience that is not passive. This season is not a waiting room, it is a workshop. In the workshop you are trained, your instruments are tuned, and your endurance is refined. Patience here is active, expectant, and strategic. You prepare while you pray, you work while you wait, you speak while you listen. This is how momentum forms, not out of idle hope, but out of disciplined alignment with heaven's timing. Trust that the exposures you've witnessed are not merely punitive for others, but purifying for you. What falls away was never meant to carry the flame you bear. What remains will be rarer and truer. You are being placed where your gifts will be amplified, not where they will be eaten. The painful separations, the uncomfortable corrections, the nights of doubt, they are all part of the making. Let this season shape your rhythm. Discern quickly, act wisely, forgive freely, and steward boldly. When you live like that, the world adjusts, and the spiritual traffic that once stalled your life begins to reroute around your new authority. You will still face opposition, but it will no longer be existential. It will be tactical. You will know how to meet it. Tonight, breathe in the reality that your sensitivity was not a burden but a signal. Sensitivity without surrender becomes strength. You are moving from a life of being pressed to a life of pressing forward. The currents are changing. Go where they carry you with eyes open and feet steady. A short, sharp closing for this chapter. Rise not to prove them wrong, but to prove the purpose true. The night you thought would never end has already begun to crack, though you may not see the sunrise yet. The air feels heavy, but heaviness is a sign of breaking. For too long, you mistook pressure as punishment, when all along it was the weight of birth. Something new is pressing through, and you are its carrier. You've walked through fire, but the fire has not consumed you. It has refined you, like gold stripped of impurities. Every betrayal that left you hollow was carving out more space for truth to live inside you. Every unanswered prayer that seemed like silence was storing up power for the hour when you would need it most. What once looked like loss now reveals itself as preparation. The desert was your classroom, and you survived long enough to graduate. Do you feel it? The shifting under your feet, the strange mixture of fear and anticipation? That trembling is not weakness. It's your spirit stretching into a space you were always meant to occupy. Darkness fought to convince you that your limits were permanent, that brokenness was your final identity. But even in your lowest moments, heaven was building within you, weapons forged by suffering, compassion sharper than steel, endurance stronger than iron, discernment more precise than any blade. The enemy thought the flames would destroy you. Instead, they forged gifts only available through fire. The first is clarity. The fog that once clouded every decision is lifting. Words that used to manipulate you now sound hollow. Promises that once swayed you now fall flat. Your spirit has learned to hear what eyes cannot see. The second is mission. The constant confusion about your purpose has given way to an undeniable call. You now see why you endured what you endured. The third is strength, not borrowed from adrenaline or pride, but poured into you by the same spirit that raised Christ from the grave. It's why you still stand when so much tried to bury you. But awakening carries a warning. Once you see, you cannot unsee. Once you hear, you cannot unhear. To know truth is to be responsible for it. You can't go back to smallness now. You can't return to the comfort of chains. Light demands movement, and heaven expects you to walk in it. The burden of awakening is that ignorance is no longer an option. But the gift of awakening is that destiny finally begins to unfold. The world around you is unraveling, leaders exposed, systems collapsing, voices losing their disguise. Don't mistake the collapse for chaos. It is cleansing. What crumbles was never built to last. What survives the shaking is what will sustain you, and in the ruins of falsehood, your voice will matter more than you imagine. This is why you were fought so hard. Not just for yourself, but for those who will find their courage through your rise. You are not called to survive quietly. You are called to stand visibly. The storm that once terrified you is revealing you. Chains that felt unbreakable are breaking at your feet. The prison cell you thought was permanent was only waiting for this moment when the walls would split and light would flood in. Chosen one, the furnace did not end you, it revealed you. And the world is about to see the warrior the fire could not consume. The path before you feels unfamiliar, yet every step carries a strange sense of recognition, as if your spirit has walked here long before your body ever arrived. This is what awakening does. It makes the strange feel like home. For years you wondered why you didn't fit in, why you felt restless in rooms that satisfied others, why your questions never seemed to land well with people who were content to stay asleep. That discomfort was never rejection, it was direction. Heaven was guiding you toward a path few are willing to walk. Now you see the battlefield for what island. It was never your co-workers, your family, your enemies, or your circumstances. Scripture was clear all along. We wrestle, not against flesh and blood, but against rulers of darkness, principalities, powers that operate unseen. They move through familiar voices, trusted structures, and even your own thoughts, because if they can turn you against yourself, they no longer need to attack from outside. That's why doubt has been your heaviest burden, why discouragement felt louder than truth, why quitting seemed easier than continuing. The enemy knew your identity before you did, and tried to make you afraid of your own reflection. But the curtain is pulled back now. You know the tactics. You can feel when heaviness creeps in and recognize it not as depression but as assault. You can hear the hiss in the words that tell you you're too old, too broken, too late, and dismiss them for what they are, lies dressed in concern. And when the storm gathers around you, you know it isn't a sign to stop but proof you're closer to breakthrough. Every chain tightening around your life was a reaction, not a prophecy. They tried to strangle your voice because your voice carries the seed of deliverance for others. They tried to keep you small because your rising would awaken those around you. And though they've studied your weaknesses for decades, what they never accounted for was the moment you'd open your eyes and refuse to agree with the lies. That refusal is war. That no more whispered into the night carries more weight than 1,000 sermons. Now your prayers change. They stop sounding like desperate cries and begin to sound like decrees. You no longer beg for doors to open. You declare alignment with the doors already written into your story. You stop pleading for scraps of hope and start announcing the abundance heaven has already placed in motion. The shift is not arrogance, it is inheritance. You are speaking from the place Christ already secured, and that authority cannot be revoked. Your life begins to move differently too. You find yourself in unexpected conversations, at odd intersections, meeting people who feel less like strangers and more like destiny. These encounters are not coincidence, they are divine strategy. Heaven positions you where your light will pierce the deepest shadows. And when you speak, even quietly, the atmosphere bends, because truth has weight. Those who once ignored you start listening without knowing why. Those who dismissed you begin to ask for your words. It isn't charisma, it's clarity carrying authority. And yet, do not expect comfort. To be awake is to be marked. Responsibility replaces ignorance. You will notice what others ignore, feel what others suppress, and carry burdens others are too distracted to see. But this is the holy burden. It will not crush you, it will sharpen you. And the strength now rising in your bones is not your own. It is resurrection strength, the spirit that raised Jesus animating your body, steadying your heart, guiding your steps. What you feared as weakness is turning into your weapon. The very sensitivity that made you feel broken is the reason you can hear the whispers of heaven more clearly. The very loneliness that made you feel discarded is why you can now walk paths others cannot see. Nothing was wasted. Not one tear, not one delay, not one silent night. It all converges here, where your awakening becomes unstoppable momentum. Chosen one, the darkness studied your fall, but it never saw your rising. And now that you stand awake, no force on earth or in the unseen can turn back what has begun. The ground beneath you feels unstable, but instability is the announcement that something new is being born. What once felt solid is crumbling, and though fear tries to rise, listen closely, it is not your destruction, it is the collapse of what was never meant to hold you. The shaking is heaven's way of clearing space. You've noticed how quickly facades are falling. People you once admired reveal motives you can no longer ignore. Systems you trusted expose cracks too wide to hide. Promises once sweet taste like ash in your mouth. At first it feels disorienting, but then you realize this unveiling is mercy. Better to see the truth than to live blind another day. The world you knew is dissolving, but the truth you carry is unshakable. And while structures collapse, something stronger rises in you. There is a steadiness you never knew before. Attacks that once left you shattered now roll off your spirit. Words that once pierced now fall harmless. Doubts that once roared now whisper faintly. You are not invincible, but you are anchored. That anchor is the knowledge that you are seen, chosen, and purposed. Nothing can erase that. This is why the storm was so fierce. The enemy understood that if you ever discovered who you were, his strategies would lose power. He tried to bury you under disappointment, exhaust you with delays, and convince you that silence meant rejection. But the silence was never absence, it was preparation. And now, you stand different, forged, focused, free. With awakening comes clarity of mission. You see where your energy belongs and where it no longer can go. You recognize distractions instantly. You sense which paths are detours and which are assignments. The confusion that once fogged your every decision has lifted, and your steps are guided by a confidence that surprises even you. You don't need every answer. You just need the assurance that heaven is with you, and that assurance is louder than fear. Pay attention to the alignments forming around you now. Destiny people are being placed in your orbit. Some will challenge you, some will strengthen you, and some will walk beside you when the road feels long. These alignments are heaven's strategy, proof that you were never meant to walk alone. And though not all will stay forever, each carries something essential for this chapter. Welcome them, learn from them, and keep moving. The enemy will try one last tactic to convince you that your awakening is arrogance, that your strength is rebellion, that your voice is too loud. Resist it. Humility is not silence, and obedience is not submission to lies. You carry truth, and truth demands sound. Speak it with grace, but speak it boldly. You are not here to blend in. You are here to blaze trails in a world stumbling through fog. The journey ahead will not be easy, but it will be purposeful. Every scar you carry is proof that you survived what was meant to end you. Every tear was seed, every prayer was fuel, every delay was shaping. Nothing is wasted, and nothing can stop what is now unfolding. Chosen one, you are no longer standing in the ruins, you are standing in the unveiling, and the light rising in you will outlast every shadow that dared to challenge it. The horizon looks unfamiliar, but do not mistake it for emptiness. What lies ahead is the life you were always meant to step into, a life waiting beyond the chains of delay. For years you felt as though heaven was silent, but silence was not absence. It was strategy, arranging the pieces of your destiny until the moment you would be strong enough to carry them. That moment is now. Every battle you endured was a setup, every unanswered prayer a seed planted in unseen soil. You thought storms were punishment, but they were preparation. They toughened your spirit, sharpened your discernment, and carved endurance into your bones. You are no longer who you once were. You are a vessel ready to carry light into places where darkness thought it reigned unchallenged. Look around at the crumbling world. Leaders are exposed, systems unravel, voices lose their disguises. It feels chaotic, but this collapse is not the end, it is the beginning. What was false cannot stand in the new era being born. The stage is being cleared for truth to emerge, and you are part of that emergence. You are not a spectator. You are a participant written into heaven's script. This is why the delays were so severe. The forces that rationed opportunity, the spiritual oversubscription that left you fighting for crumbs, were terrified of what would happen if you walked in fullness. But what is appointed for you cannot be denied forever. Doors are opening now, not because you forced them, but because heaven decreed them. No power on earth or in unseen realms can hold them shut any longer. You will walk paths you never imagined. You You will speak words you didn't know were inside you. You will find yourself in moments where fear should overwhelm you, but instead, courage flows like fire through your veins. That is not coincidence. It is the spirit within you moving freely, unrestrained at last. And others will notice, not because you shout louder, but because your very presence carries weight. Your scars will speak before your mouth does. Your survival will shine brighter than any sermon. People will ask, "How did you endure?" And your answer will awaken them to their own strength. You were never chosen for yourself alone. You were chosen because your story carries keys to unlock others. The season of hiding is finished. The season of questioning is over. You step now into purpose, not by accident, but by design. The world may shake, but you are anchored. Systems may collapse, but you are steady. Lies may roar, but truth has claimed your voice. This is your unveiling, your rising, your appointed hour. Chosen one, the night of delay has ended, the storm has passed, and the dawn that breaks over you is irreversible. Walk forward, heaven has already written your victory.